Hi, everybody. It's Kathleen from A Great Good Place for Books, and I hope you're here. And we're going to tell you about some of our favorite books that are coming out this month, or books that we think you're going to love and fall in love with, like we did. So I guess I'll start with my very first book, and it is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. And I'm not usually a mystery reader, but I really love this one. It opens with Hannah, who's met the man of, she's fallen in love, she's married Owen. And then one day everything blows up and a young girl shows up at her houseboat in Sausalito and gives her a bag of cash with a note that says, protect her. And what Owen also has a teenage daughter who he's been raising on his own. And as the day progresses, she finds out that the SEC has just raided her husband's boss's company and everything is blowing up. And it turns out that there are some big secrets there that he didn't tell her when they got together. So I read it in a night. And I've given it to several people to read, and they've all fallen in love with it. Laura doesn't usually write mysteries. That's what's so odd about this, but she did such a great job with this one. And you're rooting for Hannah and you're rooting for Bailey, and you're wondering what the hell is wrong with Owen the whole time you're reading it. And you find out that there's some family secrets going on, and there's all kinds of other things that are happening. But if you want a book that you can't put down, it comes out tomorrow. And it's again called The Last Thing He Told Me. And it's by Laura Dave, who has been a huge supporter of GGP in the past. She's done a couple readings at the store. One by candlelight, which was quite fun. But we love Laura, and this book is a real departure for her. And I think it's going to really be her breakout book. So once again, it's called The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Sam, you want to take one?
Sure. I read actually.
Sam,
yeah.
Sam, if I can interrupt for just a minute, I just wanted to let people know if they kind of want to follow along or find these books afterward, we have a page on our website that has links to all the books we're going to talk about tonight. And if you just go to ggpbooks.com, down at the very bottom of the front page, you will find it. We're going to leave it up there for at least a week. And we'll also put a link is going to be in this video on our Facebook page. But just go to the bottom of our page on ggpbooks.com if you have two monitors and you want to follow along while we talk about these books. So go ahead, Sam. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. I wanted to tell everybody about this amazing nonfiction book by Gabrielle Glasser. It's called American Baby, A Mother, a Child, and the Shadow History of Adoption. And actually both GGP's Donna and I read this book. I actually read it on her recommendation. And it's a fascinating story. It talks about the sort of adoption business really that was booming in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So you get this scattered throughout, you get this really thoroughly researched overview of all of the different forces that went into this boom in adoptions in America. And then it comes into a very personal story of this young woman, Margaret, who at the age of 17 is in love with her sweetheart, her high school sweetheart, and she gets pregnant. Both she and her boyfriend come from pretty conservative Jewish families outside of New York, and neither family approves of the other as a match. So possibly in some cases at that time, they might have been forced to get married, but neither family supported that decision for them. And Margaret was forced to surrender her baby against her will. And it's a really heart-wrenching story. It does have a redemptive ending, which is lovely, but I was fascinated by this book. I have adoption in my family. My grandmother, my mom's side was adopted, and it's not something that we really talk about. So I had a personal interest in it, but it's well researched, it's well written. So I would strongly recommend American Baby by Gabrielle Glasser. That's that one. Genevieve, do you want to do one?
Sure. I'll start with nothing says spring reading like a gothic psychological thriller murder mystery. I do read mysteries, so I love them. This is by Carol Johnston. She's a Scottish horror story writer, and this is her debut novel. It's very moody. If you like Tana French, Ruth Ware, Ruth Rendell, any of those master mystery writers, you'll really love this book. There are more twists and turns in it than in a bag of pretzels. There are two identical sisters. They're actually mirror twins, which means they're sort of reversed. If one is right-handed, the other is left-handed. Everything's kind of like looking in a mirror rather than if you look at them, they're the same. And so there's a lot of opposites that come up in the book. There's about memory and forgetting. There's about loyalty and betrayal, redemption and revenge. They all are kind of tied together in this big stew. And also the place, the house that it's set in is a character in the book. She said that she based that on her grandparents' creepy old house in Scotland. It kind of freaked me out a little bit because it really questions a lot about your memory, especially childhood memory, and what we remember and what we choose to forget. The tagline, I'll end it up here, was the most dangerous stories are the ones we tell ourselves. So it is that sort of questioning your memory, what you forget, what you're in denial about, and twists and turns all the way to the end. I didn't see the end coming. So highly recommended if you love mysteries.
That sounds great. I want to read that one now for sure.
Mike, do you want to do one?
I only have one here, so I'm gonna wait here a little bit at least. Why don't you do another, Kathleen?
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to talk about I just dropped it. The 9 Lives of Rose Napolitano. This book is one of the most original books that I've ever read. It takes place between Rose and her husband, and it starts with they agreed when they met that they weren't going to have children. Then all of a sudden her husband decides that he would like to have children. And the 9 Lives it's kind of like a sliding door. Do you guys know the movie Sliding Door, which each decision takes you in a different path? So she follows each of the different decisions, 9 decisions that Rose makes, and takes the reader down the rabbit hole with her. And I have to say, it took me about 3 chapters to figure out where she was going. But once I was there, I almost read it one night because I had to keep knowing what was going to happen next. I think it's kind of masterfully written to keep those storylines in sync without, and each chapter says Rose life 5, life, it gives you a hint of which path you're going down. And I thought it was marvelous. And it's one of those books that I can truly say, once you get into the rhythm of the writing, you cannot put it down.
Nice. And we're doing an event, right?
We're doing a book club. She'll be
Okay.
our book club, and it's a week from tomorrow.
May 11th.
Yeah. It sounds like it'll be a good book club discussion. All right. Well, I'm gonna jump in, and actually Amy from the store gave a couple titles that she wanted us to highlight. Amy reads a lot of really interesting nonfiction. The first one I want to talk about is A Little Devil in America, Notes in Praise of Black Performance. It's by the author Hanif Abdurraqib, who is the author of this Go Ahead in the Rain. And Amy describes it as, let me get that little note she wrote. It's a blend of memoir and criticism, a series of essays exploring the role of Black performance, Black celebration, and Black characters in American life. And it has high praise from Marlon James, the author of Black Leopard and Red Wolf, Jacqueline Woodson, author of Red at the Bone, and Britt Bennett, author of The Vanishing Half. I'm really intrigued with this one. And so Amy recommends this one highly. That's that.
Jen, do you want to do the other one?
Sure. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and do a cookbook. I love cookbooks. I love cooking. I think during the pandemic, a lot of people have been, you're home more, cooking more. So this book is great because it's Simply Julia, 110 Recipes for Healthy Comfort Food by Julia Turshen. She's a food writer. She's a food equity activist. She's a cook, and she's particularly a home cook, and she writes her books for home cooks. The recipes are very simple with easily obtained and affordable ingredients. She based the book and what she chose to put in it on numerous conversations with other home chefs. So it's really meant for someone who's cooking at home and not just to look at the beautiful photographs of the beautiful food and say, I could never cook that. It has great reference lists in the back. So there's a little something for everybody. It has reference lists and indexes specifically for vegetarian, vegan, dairy-free, egg-free, gluten-free, and then tips for accommodating dietary restrictions, which is, an important subject in this day and age when we're more aware of what everyone's eating. It includes kitchen organization tips, menu suggestions, including ideas for solo meals if you're just cooking for one and don't want to have 5 to 6 servings of something that you usually get out of a cookbook. It has a real intimate and personal feel. She tells some stories about why some foods are comfort foods to her. And you see pictures of her and her wife and her kid and their dog and their home. And it's just feels really personal and intimate. And it's a book that I think would be a great go-to cookbook on anybody's bookshelf.
That's great.
That's so good.
Maybe I should get that. I've been a cooking machine lately.
You've been cooking up a storm. That sounds perfect.
Of course, I'm having sandwiches for dinner after this, but.
All right. Kathleen, do you have another, or do you want me to, what do you want to do?
Well, I can talk about one of my, I absolutely love this. It's called Meet You in the Middle by Devin Daniels, and it's a debut novel. It's lighter fare, and it's about what happens when two opposites attract. And they're opposites because she is a staffer for a Democratic senator, and he is the head staffer for a Republican senator. And it takes place right after, about 9 months after, it opens 9 months after the election in 2016, when who became president. And they banter back and forth. And as they realize that there's more to this than just banter, they're actually wildly attracted to each other and they're falling in love, but she doesn't want anyone to know that they're involved. So, she wants to see him in secret, and he's not into that. But it's just really funny. It's back and forth. They have such biting dialogue that it was so much fun to read because they were constantly going at each other. But you could tell as the further they got into it, the more they discovered they had a hell of a lot more in common than they thought they did. So once again, it's called Meet You in the Middle by Devin Daniels. And it is just, it's kind of like candy for your brain. It's just a fun read. It's actually, for being the rom-com genre that's out right now, it's really well written and very well researched. Because I read all her notes in back, and she actually, before she started really structuring the book, she started interviewing different staffers throughout Washington so that she got the jargon right. So it doesn't feel like it's made up. It feels like these two actually are on opposite sides and they're at each other's throat. And it is just such a fun book. I've been recommending it to everybody who just wants a light read that's well written and you can get lost in, and it's not too smutty. But I just thought it was just a fun read, and I love everybody who works at GGP knows I love political books. So I just think this is a lot of fun, and I do want to say hi to our rep Wendy from Penguin Random House. The Penguin side, we love Wendy. She's the best. And this is one of her books.
Awesome. Okay, I'll jump in. This is one of my favorite books that I've read recently. It's We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. And it takes place, it starts out in a small California town with the chief of police. His name is Walker, and his childhood best friend is going to be released from prison for an involuntary manslaughter case from when he was quite young. And it's the effects of this tragedy on the whole community, and especially on the family of this young girl named Duchess. And Duchess is 13 years old. Her mother is a pretty vulnerable person who doesn't function very highly, and Duchess has had to grow up really fast, and she tries to take really good care of her little brother. She is one of my favorite characters I have read in a novel in a long time. Someone compared her to Scout. She has that sort of endearing quality, but she would be Scout if Scout knew how to shoot a gun and, cursed like a sailor. Duchess is a hard character, and she identifies as an outlaw, as an old school Western style outlaw, and she introduces herself that way several times in the novel. And it's about how we heal, how we recover from tragedy, how we try to make sense of what's happening to us in our lives. And it's also a murder mystery as well. I mean, it has so many layers to it. Really couldn't say enough good things about it. We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. There you go. Oh, and I think Jen,
I read that book as well. Yeah. And I loved it. I loved Duchess. Her little brother will just break your heart. There's moments that took me by surprise and took my breath away. It's a really great book, not just the murder mystery, but the whole story of their relationships, and especially Scout, I called her Scout. Duchess taking care of her little brother and how much he just wants a family that loves him. A normal family, what it works. So yeah, highly recommend it as well.
Yeah. All right.
I can go ahead and do my last book. Sure. I'm talking anyway. I love this book more than almost any book I've read in the last few years. This is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. It's a 2020 book, but it is now out in paperback, so that's why I went ahead and picked this one. It's just so sweet and so funny and so heartwarming. I just can't say enough good things about this book. It's also a really great audiobook on Libro FM. If you're into audiobooks, it was nominated for some awards for the audiobook. TJ Klune is mostly, I think, known as a YA author, and he specializes in LGBT literature. I would call this more of an young adult novel. I think it could appeal to a wide range of ages. It's a fantasy romance, if that's a genre, fantasy romance. It's really quirky, it's really funny. It's about by the book employee caseworker of the department in charge of magical children, or magical youth, sorry. And he's sent to investigate an orphanage on the Cerulean Sea. And the children there are considered dangerous magical children. There's 6 of them, but there's really nothing dangerous about them. They're just different. They're wonderful children. You'll love them all. And there's also the head of the orphanage. His name is Arthur. Linus is the caseworker. Arthur is the head of the orphanage, and that's where the romance part comes in. There's a wonderful love story between Linus and Arthur. it's just, it makes you feel all the feels. It's quirky, it's laugh out loud funny. I think everybody should read this book. How end it.
Sounds good. Kathleen, I could jump in and do one of, I have another one from one of our other
Sure.
staff. Should I do that? So Donna wanted me to tell you guys about this memoir. It's called I Want You to Know We Are Still Here. It's a post-Holocaust memoir by Esther Safran Foer. And Donna describes it. Thank you for your patience. I'm gonna pull up Donna's description.
I have to tell you, I read it too, and I absolutely loved it.
Oh, you did? Oh, great.
I read it
good.
in the night.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Oh, good. So tell us more about it too. But
Well,
what
her
Donna
son
said-
is, for those of you who don't know, her son is Jonathan Safran Foer, who wrote We Are Illuminated, right? Everyone is illuminated.
Everything is illuminated.
Yeah, he wrote that, and he kind of tells that she goes back and follows her mother's path to the United States, and her mother escaped from their village the night before they gathered up all the Jews to deport them to the death camps.
Wow.
And so what she does is she goes back with her boys when they're all adults, and she follows the path of her mother, and she tries to find family members that survived. It's heartbreaking. It's beautifully written. It will take your breath away. I mean, I was telling somebody about it in the story the other day, and I said, it's true. You understand where Jonathan gets his talent when you read his mother's book, because this is one talented family, and this is her first book that she's written, you know, and it's powerful. It talks about a time. It talks about the immigrant experiences. It talks about the secrets and the fact that people didn't talk about what they went through. So a lot of people had to go back and recreate it and find it. I just really love this book.
I think I'm going to listen to this one because it seems like it follows the same story and tells it in a different way as Everything is Illuminated.
It does.
Everything is Illuminated. If people may or may not remember, that it's both a book and it was made into a movie, and I think it was a play that was done at Berkeley Rep actually. But it's the story of it's fictionalized, but tracks this story of Jonathan Safran Foer, the son of the author here, going to Ukraine as a Jewish, recently out of college student to go explore and try to find the town that his relatives had come from. So that kind of funny, but also super serious story that is in Everything is Illuminated also forms the factual basis for this book. So.
Well, she also talks about how she encouraged her boys to follow their kind of their bliss. You know, she wanted them to be creative. She wanted this for them. She wanted them to have the opportunities, and to what she says is to also remember and make sure we all remember what happened. But it's not a downer. I mean, you'd think it would be a downer. It really isn't. It's just it's kind of it is an uplifting read. I mean, there's parts of it that will break your heart, but there's other parts of it that you're just going, wow, that's just so gorgeous. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on that one, Sam, but I love that.
No, I'm so glad that you had I'm really glad that you had so much to say about it. It sounds incredible. It's definitely on my list now. My list is growing. I don't know about anybody else's list, but my list is growing.
Sam, do you want to mention Crying in H Mart?
Yeah, so Sarah, GP's very own Sarah, wanted us to recommend this memoir. And she sent me a very nice blurb to share with you guys. So the author of this memoir, Michelle Zauner, is also a singer-songwriter known as Japanese Breakfast. And I will confess that after having heard that name, which is now one of my favorite names for a musical group or musician, I've started listening to Japanese Breakfast as well. And I'm enjoying her music. In H Mart, she flexes her also incredible writing skills. H Mart is a poignant memoir about food, grief, and complicated mother-daughter relationships. When Michelle's mom is diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, 2 years after her aunt died of cancer, Michelle returns to Portland to care for her. Her relationship with her sharp, fierce, and funny Korean mom is not easy, and they seem to find each other best through food. Sarah loved the insights, observations, and wonderful anecdotal moments that Michelle shared in the book. Ultimately, she thinks the book is a guide to savoring everything, seeing people fully, and loving them anyway. I thought that was a beautiful description of Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner.
And Wendy just chimed in and said it's one of Random House in-house buzz books. So that what that means it's a book that the entire company is super excited about.
Awesome. All right, Kathleen, do you want to do another from your list?
I think, how about Mary Jane? Kathleen, you want to talk about Mary Jane?
I want to talk about Mary Jane. Oh my God, I love this book.
I
It
thought
is
you'd
so
want to talk about
much fun. It's one of those books that you're just kind of, it's like mind candy. It's just so much fun. It opens in 1975 in Baltimore, and Mary Jane is 14 years old. And you know, when you were 14, remember that cusp year that, you know, you're stepping into adulthood and you're not quite there. But she takes a job as a nanny for a psychiatrist and his bohemian wife and their precocious daughter, Izzy. What she doesn't know is Dr. Cohn specializes in addiction, and a famous rock star, Jimmy, and his wife, Sheba, who is a child star, who is now a famous actress, move in for the summer for intensive therapy. And it's just such a celebration of family, love, how we create family, with a little bit of rock and roll thrown in. And it was the summer that Mary Jane's eyes were opened. She had been raised in a very conservative, her father every night thanks Gerald Ford, and, you know, he doesn't talk to her. Her mother thinks that the only thing she's going to be good for is a housewife, so she's always teaching her how to cook. So it does do Mary Jane good because she becomes the family cook for the extended Cohn residence. And it's also about finding family where we can. And that's one of the things that I love in a book. I love to dive into a book and fall in love with every character and want to be there and be jealous that it's only a book and I don't get to be there. I literally read this in a night, and then I brought it in and I started passing it around at the store. I know Jen read it.
I'm one of the people that was passed to. I absolutely loved it. I was 14 in 1975, so I felt like in a lot of ways I was Mary Jane. It's just, it's very touching, as well as, you know, the eye-opening and some of the humor that goes into Jimmy and Sheba and what's going on in them. And precocious little Izzy is hilarious, but she also will break your heart because she just needs and she's not getting what she needs, and Mary Jane can give it to her. So it's a lovely relationship between Izzy and Mary Jane.
Well, I also loved the way that Mary Jane wasn't used to being hugged and kissed, and all of a sudden she's thrown into this family where
Izzy
hugging and kissing is like, they do it a lot.
A lot.
And then she also her mother always was well completely put together when she woke up in the morning. And, the Coens sometimes walk out in their underwear and they change in front of everybody. And it's like she's thrown into this world that she has absolutely no idea how to navigate, but you end up really falling in love. And I love Jimmy. I thought Jimmy he saw Mary Jane, he got her. And it was like he felt like a big brother who was going to show her the ropes and let her know that there was talent and there was a lot of love there.
In a lot of ways was like her big sister. I mean, when she took her to buy
Sheba was great.
Clothes. And of course, then Mary Jane has to go out of her house in her mother approved clothes and then change when she gets to the cons into her Sheba clothes. And, it's
my very favorite thing was the opening when she shows up with shorts that are too long and Sheba makes her stand on the bench and she cuts her shorts off. And then Mary Jane runs into her mother at the store and she puts on an apron to hide how short her shorts are so her mother doesn't freak out that she's running around with her butt hanging out all over Baltimore. I mean, I loved these characters. I thought that they were warm, generous. I mean, I liked every single one of them. I mean, her mother and father were challenging for me, but
they were very real for 1975 kind of parents, that I can recall. I mean, they weren't like my parents, but a lot of parents.
Yeah, they weren't like mine either. But I mean, I absolutely fell in love with this book from the minute. And I need to thank Mike, because Mike was the one who he sent me a text and he said, Kathleen, you've got to get this book because it is a Kathleen book. And Mike, you were absolutely right. This is a book that I just cannot wait to put in people's hands next Tuesday. And I'm super excited because we're going to be talking to Jessica Anya Blau on Thursday, May 13th. And I have so many questions for her. I mean, I also found out she lived in Piedmont in the late 80s as a nanny. So she's got Montclair connections. And if you want a book that's just gonna make you feel awesome, this book, Mary Jane, is absolutely the book.
Awesome.
Nice.
So good. So I have a couple more. I just have another couple from Amy, one of which I've also read. I could do one of those. I don't know, Mike, if you wanted to jump in or you wanted to finish up.
So why don't you do the two you have? I'll do mine, okay. And then we'll let Kathleen finish with the Gunkel. So.
Okay, that sounds perfect.
I think that'll wrap us. So.
Okay, so this is a Penguin Random House night. Amy also wanted us to highlight Joan Didion's new collection, Let Me Tell You What I Mean. And these essays, they span her career, 1968 to 2000, but they have never been gathered together until now. So this is going to be new Joan Didion writing for the fans of her writing. And it's mostly she's really focusing on the insights on writing, fantasies about the fantasy of San Simeon, not getting into Stanford, pondering the fraught parent-child dilemma. I think, you don't really have to say much about Joan Didion. If you know her, you love her. And she is the author of 5 novels, 10 books of nonfiction, and a play. So remarkable. But anyway, so Let Me Tell You What I Mean. And I don't know if anyone else has had a chance to look at this yet.
Yeah, I listened to this and found it really, really just, Joan Didion is known as an incredible writer. And as you listen to this or you read it, you'll see why. She just has a lot of great essays here, partly some of it about being a writer, some of it about, being in California. A couple that I particularly remember and really enjoyed was a piece that she did about interviewing Nancy Reagan in the California governor's mansion. and kind of the whole set piece of trying to, how her image was being created. She was there at the same time. Some photographers were there trying to show her naturally clipping roses in the garden. And so Joan Didion kind of describes everything that goes into this natural sort of image that basically takes 8 hours to put together. And another piece about she talks about whether Hemingway's one of his unfinished, unpublished novels was about to be published, and she writes about and she takes the side of it should not be published, that very much being of the view that a writer's work, they should be the person to say it's ready to go out into the world or not, rather than their heirs. So anyway, just wonderful writing. I liked it a lot. So.
Oh, great. Thank you. And then another book that both Amy and I read, this one's going back a little bit. This is not a new spring release, but there's another collection of essays, Having and Being Had by Eula Biss. And if you do not know Eula's writing, I strongly recommend her. She's a poet and essayist. She won the National Book Critics Circle Award. She was named a top 10 best books by the New York Times Book Review. Having and Being Had is, it's described by Kathy Park Hong as a revelatory and necessary primer on how late capitalism affects our daily lives. And I just love this quote. This is the quote that I picked it up, read it, and I said, oh, I have to read this book. She says, "My adult life can be divided into two distinct parts," Eula Biss writes, "the time before I owned a washing machine and the time after." And she's examining a lot of our assumptions about capitalism, consumerism, wealth, poverty, and just the effects becoming, she's become a homeowner. And this is just this huge transition in her life in terms of where she feels she fits in society and what it says about her and means about her. And she just thinks so deeply about things that I know for myself, that I just sort of just accept certain things, and then I read an essay Eula writes and it just opens things up. Like it just opens up my mind and gets me thinking more deeply as well. So I'm actually going to go back and reread all the essays, because and it's lovely because her voice is just so intimate, and she's just letting you sort of see these little windows into her life, revealing things about herself and her relationships. And I just cherished it, really, really did. So that's my last recommendation, I think, for this evening.
I loved that one as well. I thought it was just really, really well written there. So I'm going to do a little palate cleanser here before Kathleen goes to the Gunkel. I've been enjoying the Murderbot Diaries, which is a very popular science fiction series that started with these 4 novellas. I actually listened to it on Libro.fm, but you can also, these 4 novellas are available, or you can buy them in individual ones. But Murderbot is set somewhere in, I assume it's the far, far future, where space travel is around, and Murderbot is a construct which is part organic and part machine-made security system, security robot who is assigned to guard humans, and he really despises how stupid humans are and how they're always nearly getting him killed. And he has hacked his own governor module so he can spend his time as he pleases between, trying to save the stupid humans. And he usually wants to just watch soap operas, space soap operas. But it's just super, super funny. Great palate cleansers. There's now 6 of them. These 4, the Murderbot Diaries, were all novellas, so they're relatively short. And now there's 2 full-length novels, The Network Effect and Fugitive Telemetry, that just came out. I recommend starting with the novellas because they give you good background that you'll need in the other books. But really, really fun read there. So, all right, Kathleen, you want to go finish
Yeah,
this up with the Guncle?
I'm going to tell you guys about the book that I'm probably the most excited about for the season. I was really, really, really lucky, and I got to read this book. I read it a year ago in manuscript. And after I read it, Stephen's editor asked me if I'd write a letter to booksellers of why I love this book. I mean, I loved it because Stephen wrote it, but I thought I'd read you guys the letter. It says, "Dear friends, I don't know about you, but I absolutely love Stephen Rowley's books. Lily and the Octopus celebrated the love and loss one can feel for a pet. The editor examined the relationship of a writer with the two most important women in his life, his mother and his editor, and in this case, the editor is Jackie O. Now with the Guncle, Stephen has done it again. This book is special. I know you're thinking everyone says that about an author they love, but truly, friends, in this case, I mean it. It's been a long time since a book made me laugh out loud and cry at the same time. In the Guncle, we meet Patrick O'Hara, one successful actor living in Palm Springs, hiding from the world and his own pain over the loss of his boyfriend. Patrick is perfectly content with his solitary life until he's jolted back to reality by the death of his best friend and sister-in-law, Sarah. When he heads home to Connecticut for the funeral, his youngest brother, Greg, has a bombshell announcement of his own. He's a prescription drug addict who needs to enter rehab immediately. In the wake of Sarah's death, he wants Patrick to take his young children, Maisie and Grant, back to Palm Springs and keep them till he finishes treatment. What does Patrick, a 40-something, aging gay actor, know about raising kids? It turns out much more than he thought he did. What ensues is one of the funniest and the most tender love stories I've read. Readers will cheer Patrick on as he learns to navigate Maisie and Grant's loss and how he gives them the Guncle rules on how to live life to the fullest. The kids also teach Patrick how to open his heart to the possibility of love and force him to re-enter his own life. There's heart and love on every single page of the Guncle. Sarah's birthday party actually absolutely gutted me. A scene in a book hasn't made me cry like that in years. In a way, I'm jealous of you. You get to do something I will never get to do again. You get to open this book, read the first line, and fall in love." So that's what I wrote to my fellow booksellers. I cannot tell you how much I love this book. It's full of so much heart. It's laugh out loud funny. You'll learn the fine art of caftan wearing. You'll learn how to throw a Christmas party in August. You'll learn the difference between brunch and lupper. It is truly one of the best books that I've read about grief in a very long time. And it absolutely made me laugh. And I can tell you that I am a huge, huge Stephen Rowley groupie now. I mean, he's one of my very favorite writers and one of my favorite humans. I absolutely adore him, and I adore his husband, Byron. And we luckily are going to have Stephen in our Zoom studio later this month. And if you haven't been to an event with Stephen, he is one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. I just absolutely adore him. And this is a book that I am going to sell to every customer who walks in the door this summer. So I can't wait for it to come out on the 25th. And I just think it's one of the most beautiful books I've read. But I loved it. You need to read it.
I'm really excited about that one because I love Stephen too, and I've already pre-ordered my copy.
So
You can
everybody,
pre-order it tonight.
a reminder, all of these recommendations we talked about tonight are on ggpbooks.com/spring 2021. And they're also, for at least for a week, they'll be down at the bottom of just the main homepage if you forget the /spring 2021. Yeah. So
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Oh, there's some stuff. Did we get all the chat?
Well, hi, Wendy. Did I do you proud with the Gunkel doll?
Okay, why don't we go ahead and wrap, since we don't have anything currently here and we got 45 minutes in already, so.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
So,
Good night, all.
night. Happy reading.
Happy reading.
Thanks, everybody.